Hello guys, this is a Patreon early release video. In other words, it is a video that is out for Patreons a few days earlier than its public release. Before people start freaking out though, this is a series of videos I started recording especially for my Patreons, seeing as a lot of times their funding helps pay for the tools or components used in the video and has nothing to do with my normal vids, which will be instantly publicly available, always and forever. For this, I am simply recording projects that I normally would have done anyways for personal use or entertainment, but never really thought of recording before. This is a live video, meaning it's basically real time and has minimal editing, hence its length. If you want to get early access to videos like this, please consider becoming my Patreon, which you can do with the link in the description below. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the video. So, hello YouTubers, it is I, Trollface the Man. Now, the other day I went to a resale shop and I bought this infinity mirror. Actually, it was like, yeah, pretty much just yesterday actually. And basically the concept of an infinity mirror is that there's a reflective piece in the back, usually a mirror, some lights in between that and a front glass plate that is tinted, and the idea is, and as you can see, you can actually see me right now. The idea is that when these lights in the center emit photons, they're light, they reflect off the back panel, and they reflect off this front panel, and sort of keep bouncing back in between one another. The thing is, though, is that this front panel isn't completely opaque, which means that it lets a little bit of the light slip through, and it basically creates an illusion of depth, like really deep, like something that's very flat can look a lot deeper than it actually is. However, this one is just, well, frankly, it's crap. Here's the box for it. It looks pretty old. It looks like it's something you would see like during the 80s or something. But I mean, I can just plug it in and show you what it looks like. It's not very impressive at all. And I'm going to try and modify this today to make it more, or actually impressive. In which case, that might be the whole reason you do or don't see this video, because if it doesn't work, then I'm simply not going to put this video out there because I don't want to look like an idiot. But the first thing that's funny about this is it says, this unit, right here on the side of the box, this unit has a polarized plug. One side is wider than the other to reduce the danger of electric shock. Do not alter this plug in any way. Never use an extension cord unless the plug can be inserted all the way in. Or inserted all the way. That's funny because I'm looking at the plug right now that came in the box, and it is definitely not a polarized plug. Both heads of the plug are exactly the same size, so I don't know how. I'm just confused by that. It puts out 12 volt AC, so not DC. It puts out 12 volt AC, which means there's no rectifier, either half wave or full wave rectifier built into this plug. This is also receiving AC just at a 1/10 the level that the wall puts out. So I'm going to plug in this non-polarized plug, and I'm going to flip it over and turn on the switch in the back. And voila, the infinity mirror. I'm just going to grab the box and read what it says on the back. Create a spectacular 3D light show with the flick of a switch. Stare into the mirror and let infinity memorize you. Or mesmerize you. Memorize. Mesmerize you. You can see that there is a little sense of depth. It looks a little bit deeper than the mirror actually should, but it's really not impressive for an infinity mirror. Here, let me turn off the lights so that way you can get a better view at it. These studio lights are, in fact, pretty bright in here, which sort of dampens the effect. Okay, so now that that has been turned off, you can actually see the effect at least a little bit better. Now, the issue with this infinity mirror is they did a lot of things wrong. First off, the back is not an actual mirror. It's more like some type of like colorful foil, which does seem to be intentional because it's supposed to make those lines. So that can basically be forgiven. However, making these inner bits white is just a terrible idea because it causes a lot of the light to be reflected off those walls and basically produce more light that shines right through, and it just makes it where the effect isn't anywhere near as powerful as it should be. So one of the things I'm going to do is paint that inner wall, the middle wall, black instead of white, and hopefully that should improve the effect a little bit. And the other thing that ruins the effect is the fact that this tinting isn't dark enough. It's not anywhere near as dark as it should be. The darker it is, the more reflections of light you get, and thereby the more impressive the effect looks. So I'm going to actually replace that with some tinting of my own, which it doesn't make much difference right now because I actually have to put it on the inside, but some darker tinting of my own that should also help to improve the effect, in theory. This thing, though, it honestly looks ugly. It looks horrible, in my opinion. There's LEDs on the side here, and they go red, yellow, lime green. And it just looks like the worst color choice I could possibly imagine. I guess if these are LEDs, maybe that was all the colors they had this time, but it's just like this. It's kind of like a cherry red. It's not too bad. Then you have this nasty looking orange yellow, and then you just have this lime green, and just, ugh. And the inside here is red, white, blue, green, yellow. It's not as bad, but that's because those aren't LEDs. Those are actually incandescent lights that have been painted whatever color that they've been painted to produce the effect, which means that they actually do not put off that color of light. The painting basically filters it to being that color of light. So you're actually losing quite a bit of light there. If at all possible, I'd like to replace those with LEDs, but it's very likely that I may not be able to, because if they are, they are incandescent, so they're probably running off of at least a decently high voltage. Maybe if I put some resistors in series, or I just limit the voltage going into them. I don't know how exactly these are hooked up, whether series or parallel. I'll have to take a look in there, but if at all possible, I would like to replace those with LEDs. It would just make the whole thing a lot better, in my opinion. But yeah, so here's the infinity mirror. It creates a little bit of effect, but not very impressive, in my opinion. So let's get to taking this apart. I'm going to turn back on my lights. And turn this off and unplug it. So once again, now you can just see it's like a mirror. It's dark on the inside. So like I said, I have silver spray paint. I'm going to put it in the backing. If the coloring in black on the sides and the extra tint doesn't improve the effect very much, I'm also going to spray this on the back. I'm going to actually try and preserve that original array of light effect if at all possible, but if it's not possible, I'm totally going to spray that spray paint on the back. Then I also have some cheap paint brushes and a bottle of acrylic paint that I seem to have misplaced, so I'll have to find that later. Of course, the well is going to be too deep for me to use the screwdriver for, because why would anything be simple? That would just make things, well, reasonable. So excuse me while I find another screwdriver real quick. Alright, I found some cheapy screwdriver. One of the worst things about screwdrivers like this is when the tips get all bent up when you're trying to unscrew stuff. They strip out, and it's just usually useless. Yeah, like right now, it is useless. Actually, the manufacturers seem to have stripped out these screws themselves, too, when they put them in. I can't really show you it, but the screws seem stripped out as it is, so let me try and find a bigger screwdriver, and hopefully I'll be able to get this undone. After some searching around, I found that literally none of my screwdrivers actually would fit in here. I found one that looked promising, but it was too wide for the hole. No, there's going to be some inappropriate comments about that, so I resorted to these little driver things, which I hate because they're actually infuriating to try and get a good grip on it all. But luckily, this isn't on too tight, I say, while struggling to get that screw out. So I am able to unscrew them like this and hopefully get this back cover off. Okay, well, that was painless almost. That does actually sound like glass. That is coated glass. I'm surprised about that. So as you can see, these are the screw heads that were in there. Would focus in on my hand. And they are stripped out. I don't know how you manage to strip out screw heads, screwing them into plastic, but China, more than likely, seeing as it actually says made in China on the box. I'm not just making a random assumption. So yes, those are in fact LEDs in there. Now this mirror is completely loose now. Apparently it was just held in place to that little rim there, which is actually good because it'll make putting the tint on later a lot easier. You know, I realize my desk looks pretty bad. If you're wondering why that is, that's because I do all my electronic work and prototyping work on here. And I apologize for that. You know what, actually? I think I might have a quick solution. There we go. Out of sight, out of mind, right? Alright, so this does in fact have a capacitor in there. Can't read its value because it's on the other side, but that is a shock risk. It looks like it might be feeding the LEDs around the rim. I am just going to make sure that that is discharged, oops, before I continue, even if it's probably only a low voltage capacitor. Nope, no juice in there. Okay, well, I see resistor there. They have a, it's hard to see, but on the other side here they have a chip potted in resin, which is what apparently drives this LED loop. Then they have capacitor here, 16 volts, 47 nanofarad. A diode here. I don't know if that's supposed to rectify. Yeah, it looks like it's rectifying the. Oh wait, why would you need to rectify that though? Those are. No, it's. Whoa. I'm not quite sure what that's for. I think it would to rectify the LED current. But it looks like it's almost meant to rectify this, but you wouldn't need to rectify this because those are incandescents. I'm not sure why they would do that, but. Let me see. This is only a 16 volt capacitor. Let's see what the actual voltage in here is. Now this isn't, I honestly don't really think this is much of a shock risk at all, even though if I'm doing the standard safety precautions, but you never know if they have some type of circuit in there to jump up the voltage to a higher voltage. It could be, you could get quite a zing out of it. So I have my trusty multimeter here, which I'll set down over here, hopefully get it on camera. I'm going to switch it over to, I don't know, like I said, I don't know if it's supposed to be rectified or not, but I am going to switch it over to AC current, or AC to start with. How is that even on? I don't know if you guys can see it right here, but there's actually a light. There's actually a light here that the leads are twisted over top of one another and touching. Maybe they were coated. Oh, this blue one over here is the same exact thing. They actually have the leads twisted over top of one another. Not very smart, but I guess that's the thing with cheap, quick manufacturing. Let's zoom you back out here. These lights do get fairly hot, even just running, but that's no surprise for incandescents. So let's see. It is... Oop, that was a short. My bad. 5.6 volts. It looks like we are talking about 5.5 volts on these. Try to get the back here. It seems to be fluctuating though. This one's 6 volts when I get the back, so maybe it was just a bad connection. So 6 volts AC. Just for the heck of it, let's see if DC shows up with anything. Nope, so it is definitely, it's only an AC current. So maybe if I put a rectifier in there, I can lower that, or I can rectify it and see if that will work for half-wave rectifier. Might work fine for that, for putting LEDs in here, because I would really like to replace these with LEDs. Okay, what was I actually doing? You know, I should test these other ones real quick too. Excuse me. So, I know that can't be AC. It's just probably going through so quickly I can't actually test it, unfortunately. Oh, or I'm an idiot and I have it set to... Yeah, that was not very smart of me. Okay, peak voltage of only 0.5 volt. That doesn't seem correct. That was the red. Let's try this one. No, see, it must be because it's going through so quickly. I can't properly test the voltage. But there is another way I can sort of try and see an approximate level, which is... One second. I have myself some LEDs here, and if I, this is green, jump the connection here. If you guys can see that, this green does in fact light, which means that there is at least a forward voltage of 2.8 volts. And like I said, the green is a lot better color than the one that's currently in here, which is that sort of like nasty lime green you see here. So I might actually replace those LEDs because, like I said, they are just terrible, terrible looking in my opinion. Okay, unplug this. And I guess I can start painting the inside white here. Now I'm not going to make you guys sit through all that. I will paint a little bit and then fast forward it to when I am just about done. And then, where did my paint go? I think I had this conversation just a little while prior to myself. Here it is. On the floor underneath something somehow. So this is just some basic acrylic paint. I'm hoping that it will work adequately. And I got some cheap paintbrushes from Home Depot, which basically have a name that I can't even find online for manufacturer. Oh, look at that little gripper things on them. That's kind of neat though. and this is what I'm going to be using. I also had, where is it at now? Whatever. I'll just use this, I guess. Some nice glob of paint there. Like I said, I really hope I don't ruin my black cloth with this black paint. It'd really be a shame if I spilt any on it. And I'm more than likely going to have to do 2 or 3 layers of this black to really get a nice effect out of it. But that's how it goes. So I guess I'm going to paint this for a while and I will tune back in when I make some progress. So yeah, that actually went much quicker than I thought it was going to. I have already finished this. This only took about 3 minutes, and this is only the first coat. But it looks like it's going pretty well. I need to let it dry before I can put on an additional coat. That's actually not a spot I missed. That was a spot I just touched with my finger and messed it up. You can see. But at any rate, yeah, I'm going to wait for this to dry a bit, and then I'm going to move on to the next coat. I'm probably going to put 3 coats on here just to be sure that I got everything covered well. You know, actually, I kind of had a little bit of an idiotic moment earlier when I was saying I don't know what that capacitor is for. It looks like it's going to the LEDs. It is, in fact, going to the LEDs. The reason why is because they're using a single diode to act as a half-wave rectifier, and then they're using that capacitor as a smoothing capacitor, so that way you don't get that shimmering you get from, you know, half-wave rectified or even full-wave rectified LEDs. The thing is, though, is with it strobing like it is, where it goes around in circles, I'm not sure how necessary that was. But if I do replace these for LEDs, I'm basically going to do the same thing here, where I'm going to have a half-wave rectifier and then a diode to help, or not diode, a capacitor to help smooth out the lights. But these run continuously, so that's a little bit more important in my opinion. This second layer seems almost dry. We're getting very close, so tune back in a minute. It's been about 10 minutes later, and, you know, the acrylic is still... My fingers are very rough, apparently rough enough to scratch the stuff off. It's still a little bit, not wet, but not fully cured, but I'm just gonna forego that and start putting on the next layer because I don't have all day. So this is basically, actually I was going from this side before, and this was basically all I was doing is I was just taking it and smearing it around. Trying usually to go one way, which is, I'm going up. Oops, I didn't realize I wasn't showing anything on the camera. Just trying to go straight up. Seems to work well for getting a nice, smooth, even coat. Like I said, I am going to go with 3 layers for this because I don't think 2 layers is going to cover it well enough. And you actually want to be careful because, like, right now I played with one area a little bit too much and I basically resaturated the paint underneath, and I started pulling up the paint, basically doing the same exact thing that I was doing the first time, which is just exposing white spots. So that's a good thing to keep in mind with this. So yeah, I'm just going to continue working on this. So I'm actually about to put on the 3rd and final coat of this acrylic paint, but I was sick of waiting for it to dry naturally, so what I did is I actually put back on the cover the glass cover and plugged this back in and basically let it sit with the incandescent lights on. I figured because they generate heat, it would help heat up the area and basically dry the paint sooner, which it did. But you can actually see there's a little bit of humidity build up in here now that should slowly air out, but the paint is nice and dry and ready for me to put on my third and hopefully final coat. So I am going to do that, and then by the way, spoiler, because I got to see how it looks now that this has been painted black, and I can tell you it looks a lot better. So I'm excited to show you that in a minute, but so I'm going to put on the third and final coat first. This time I'm not going quite as heavy with the paint because I don't want to re-wet the old layers and basically strip them off. So I'm going a very, very light coat to hopefully prevent that from happening. Well, no guarantees. It's just what, in theory, it makes sense. If I put too much paint on, it's going to resaturate the old layers. That's done, so I just got to wait for it to dry again. Might actually fill in around this rim, seeing as I have some extra paint too. This isn't necessary, but when the glass sits on it, it'll just look darker around that area. The thing is about painting this black is it's not only going to make it function better, but it just, I think, makes it aesthetically a lot more pleasing than just that sort of white for this whole thing. So yeah. Okay, so the third coat has been put on and is now fully dry. As I mentioned before, what I actually did is I took this glass plate and I put it over top of there, and I switched on the lights, and that helped it dry a lot quicker. So, actually, first what I want to do is I want to show you what it looks like with the lights on, without the cover on. So actually, if you look at it with the lights on without the cover on, you actually still get a little bit of that effect of sort of like the extra depth. But if you take this piece of glass and you put it over top of there, you can see that it actually adds more so. You can see the extra reflections in there. So if you see me moving this around, those extra reflections that are generated adds that additional perception of depth. Let me turn off the light and you can see it a little bit better. Now first off, wow, this really has made a difference with the black. As you can see right here, just look at how much more color and everything is inside of here. And once again, that's because the white before was basically doing the equivalent of a bright flashlight, which is the extra light in there was washing out a lot of the colors. So like if you see, when I point this flashlight at there and I have a bright light, you don't see anywhere near the amount of colors. So that white was reflecting around a lot of excess light, causing those colors to be washed out. So once again though, if I take this glass plate, you can already see some of the colors that are way deeper in there show up. If I put it on, now it really has the sort of perception of being a lot deeper than it actually is. Of course, it's only this little tiny thing, but you can see a lot of colors going really deeply in there. But we are not done yet. I'm still going to put on a darker tint to hopefully further add to the illusion and possibly replace these with LED lights, which at this point I'm pretty sure that's exactly what I'm going to do. But yeah, I mean, just the black right there. It's amazing that manufacturers that prototype this type of stuff don't even realize simple things like that. Because I mean, just the amount of commotion, but in a good way, that's going on now that I've painted that black is just outstanding compared to the sort of bleh that was going on before. It just looks so much better now. So that was only the first step in making this infinity mirror go from bleh to something that is definitely more impressive, which I would say just that black coating on the inside has already made this thing look a lot better. But the second thing I'm going to do is add a darker tint. So this is glass, surprisingly. I thought it was plastic at first, but it's definitely glass. The second thing I'm going to do, set this off to the side, is knock everything off of my my sheet. I had some electronic stuff over there in the corner along with the paint that I just flung to the floor. So now I'm going to have to find a lost capacitor and diode shortly. But I'm going to take this window tint that I bought online, and I'm basically going to take this disc and lay it out here on this window tint, and then take a razor blade and cut around it as precisely as possible, and then stick this window tint to this glass disc. And that should add even more depth by trapping more light inside of there. But who knows? Who knows if it's actually going to work? It's only going to, or I guess we're only going to see when we actually try it out, eh? So, well, here it is, guys. I'm wearing gloves so that way I don't get fingerprints all over it. Our new mirror, which is backed by that window tint I showed you before. So you might think, well, it looks almost transparent, or it looks almost opaque, no light can really get through it. That's not true. Light can get through it, just not very much at a time. So basically how I decided to do this is I put a small square of tint on first, the disc, then I took a razor blade and I cut around the edges. Let's see if this helps it out. So it's definitely darker, and that's expected because you're lessening the amount of light that can get in. But let's see what happens when I turn off the lights. Yeah, that's right. It's looking nice. We get a lot more actual depth here. The light has been reduced quite a bit, and that's to be expected because, like, once again, we're cutting down the amount of light that can escape. But as you can see, the actual structures, it looks like there's sort of piers of different light in there. It looks very, very 3D. Remember, this is only a little tiny toy right here. But the depth of the light is just so much better now. Like I said, it actually creates a sort of 3D illusion. Also, when I put, because I decided at this point I am going to replace those lights with LEDs. When I put my LEDs in there, they should be a little bit brighter too. So we should sort of make up a little bit for the amount of light that's been lost due to the window tinting. So yeah, that's looking pretty good though. So you can see how it creates that sort of 3D effect, like there's a bunch of little tiny light needles inside of there. That's what we're going for. That is definitely what we want. I mean, just the black and the window tint has already improved this toy so much. My glove made a farting sound. Anyways, yeah, it's already improved this toy so much, but I'm really hoping to bring it even better. Now, one of the things is when I add LEDs in here, because they are actually going to be the exact color, instead of being like a like a white or incandescent light that's been coated with some type of coloring to filter out the other spectrums of light. They will be exact colors, which mean they'll be red, green, blue, and white. We won't get so much of that rainbow effect going through there, though, because what's actually happening is the light is dividing up into its base components, which is basically a rainbow inside there, give it all that rainbow color. So instead of seeing like red, green spires, blue, green spires, we'll more or less see a lot of green, blue, red spires, which might be a little bit of a trade-off. However, I will still put a white LED in there, which should still, at least for that LED, give a rainbow effect. So it won't hopefully be losing too much for that. It's looking good though. I like this. It is coming out pretty nice so far. So I'm going to move on to the next step. Well, seeing as I already know that the new filter and the black painting have worked very well to accomplish what I want to accomplish, I'm still a little bit torn about whether or not I want to repaint the backdrop as a solid color, because if I do that, it's going to get rid of that spire effect, which you can't see very well because, like I said, this glass now is very, very heavily tinted. I need to set this off to the side somewhere because I need to move on to the next step, which is why I'm wearing these gloves, because once again, I don't want to get oils all over the glass. It won't harm them, I just would have to clean it again afterwards. So I think the next thing I'm going to do, like I said, I already have decided to replace these inside here with LEDs. If I touch an LED, I can take off these gloves now too. If I touch an LED directly to one of these leads, I'm curious as to whether or not it will blow it out. Of course, if I try it with a yellow one, it more than likely will right off the bat. Let's try a blue one. See how much current might be going through these. Let's try and see if I can get one that you can see on camera. So probably something like right there. No, actually, surprisingly enough, it's I'm sure it's getting too much current though. But it's not burning out. So that's kind of a good indicator of something, at least. It means if I do use some type of resistor or something in line with these, that hopefully it won't be carrying through too much wattage to just basically burn it out. Let's try yellow. Now, yellow are very sensitive, so this more than likely is going to burn up. You can actually see it take on a bit of current because the rest of the lights dim down. Oh, yep, the yellow looks like it just burned out. Not necessarily burnt out, but it overheated. It basically acted like a short. So this LED is probably no longer good. That's why it was dimming down so much. The LED pretty much went like open circuit there. Alright, so like I said, I am definitely, though, I'm going to start with the simple stuff. I am going to remove these horrible looking LEDs on the side here. This nasty green color. Like I just don't find it appealing in the least bit. I'm probably going to replace the what order does this go in? Red, yellow, green, red, yellow, green, red, yellow, or red, green, yellow, green? What? Okay, let's look at that again. Red, yellow, green, red, yellow, green, red, green, yellow, green. Maybe this is supposed to be, no, that doesn't, oh my goodness, they did that. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 LEDs, so they just put 2 random ones with no correlate. Oh my god. As someone with OCD, that is seriously bothersome. Now, I'm not talking about OCPD, I'm talking about legitimate OCD. That is going to bother me. I'll wonder if I can figure something out for that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, there's 10 LEDs here. But like I said, I'm going to keep probably the reds in here because the reds don't actually look too bad. They're not as vibrant as reds nowadays, but you know, they're not too bad. I'm going to take out this nasty lime green LEDs and these yellow LEDs, like that nasty looking lime green color. Actually, because I do have green LEDs, I can show you the difference between that is their old green color, and this is how this is also taking alternating current through it, so it's actually rectifying it too. Actually, I didn't ever think about that, but this is how greens look nowadays. I'm sure you can tell the difference between which one looks better. That is just ugh. These LEDs are actually getting pretty hot doing that too. Alright, so I know it's pretty nice looking at this black surface here, but like a magician, I got to take that off there because otherwise, when I start soldering, I'm going to burn the crud out of it, which I don't want to do. Or more appropriately, when I start desoldering. So this can be switched off. That unplugged. Question is, where is a good spot to start? Basically, nowhere. Because the way this is, it's actually, oh, look at that. Nice old long strip that can pull right on out. If I don't break anything, let's hope. Okay. That actually makes desoldering a fair amount easier, to be honest. So that's actually a good thing. Bad thing is I need the actual light on to tell me which one is what color. So I'll have to turn that back on and then mark what is what color real quick. Okay, I now have marked all the different colors on this side so I can tell what color the LED lights are: green, red, green, yellow, green. So basically I'm going to start desoldering those. And alright then, I guess let's get to this. So I actually don't have any desoldering wick for helping clean up the pads after I take these LEDs out. However, what I do have is I have this iron that comes with a little solder pump. And I don't know if this works at all, to be honest. I have, I mean, I know it works. It heats up. I bought this at a garage sale for $1. Excuse me for my throat. And I'm curious as to whether or not it's going to work. And I also have this solder. I'm like 90% sure it's solder. It's either that or super, super thin wire, but it's so, it has to be solder. Anyways, I got this from an abandoned house that the previous owner let me rifle through, and I found this hidden in one of the cabinets. So I figured instead of using my super expensive silver bearing solder, I would use this really thin solder, and it looks like it has a flux built into it. At least I hope it does, because otherwise it would be a real pain to use. But I'm going to use that to wet this solder so that way I can suck it away with my pump. There is a quite nasty smelling smoke leaking out of this this solder pump here, as you can see. I really hope that's not like some dead bug or something that managed to find its way up there and is now being like torched. Well, it might be very likely. Okay, so basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to wet this spot with a little bit of solder, fresh solder. Things nice and liquidy again. And then I'm hoping the power combined of this and my desoldering pump And I will be able to that's why they bent the LED leads, so that way they're harder to remove. Then said I will, maybe I can just use this pump itself. You know what, I'm not even gonna bother, because that hole basically cleaned up itself. I'm not even gonna really bother with trying to clean up all these holes. It's just gonna be too much of a pain. It would be easier if the this would stay in place, but it does not. So yeah, I'm not even gonna bother with that. Okay, so there's apparently a side that needs to go into. So I'll just bend those and solder them back into place. And it should be soldered back in place. So now, if I take this and I plug it back in, like so, perfect. Oh, it is a fair bit brighter than the other ones, and that is because it is a newer LED, and the old LEDs really kind of sucked. I might be able to flatten that top off, though, in a little bit to sort of smooth out the light projection. Won't worry too much about that right now. I'm going to continue moving through. I'm going to desolder them all and then resolder the new ones in. Well, okay then. First off, don't do this. Don't handle a live circuit without gloves or whatever. I'm totally doing it because I'm a rebel, but as you can see, we actually have all the new lights wired in, which do weird things if you short them. But instead of being the lime green, the yellow, orange, and red, it is now red, green, and blue, which I think looks a lot better than before. Turn off some lights, that way you can see it better. It's like a right old light show in here. Really does a lot if you face it at if you face it at something. And that's because I said these if you look, the red lights aren't very bright at all. It's because they're older technology, and plus reds aren't typically as bright anyways. But maybe I will replace the reds, I don't know, get a stronger red in there. But I mean, whew, got some serious color now. A lot of spunk. Let me put it in here and see how it looks. There we go. So can't fit it back in with these long leads on here. Of course, I'm just going to take a tool and trim them down. See how this says use safety glasses? That is something I am not going to do because, once again, I am a rebel. And some of the warnings they put on stuff are sometimes a little bit ridiculous. I mean, I'm sure that you can definitely fling stuff in your eyes if you're trimming this stuff and you're not careful, but I mean, sometimes it's just so ridiculous what they put on stuff so that way you don't get sued. Nail clippers, like toenail clippers or fingernail clippers, actually typically will have a warning on there too saying the same thing, that you need to wear safety glasses when you trim your nails. So that's pretty crazy in my opinion. But you know, there's somebody out there that probably had a nail go in their eye and then they sued the company for who knows how much money. Because that is society nowadays. They're all clipped down, so hopefully, if things aren't too complicated, I will be able to just push them back into place here. Before, they were just like pushed in place like this underneath. So I think I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do it off camera to keep things simple. Well, okay then. This is starting to live up more and more to the box's description of mesmerizing. Now I think it will actually literally mesmerize you blind because these lights are very bright. A lot better than the previous ones. Let me put the glass back on, shall I? I haven't put the LEDs on the inside yet. I haven't installed them, but yeah, that is looking a lot better. I'll probably have to flatten these tips out a little bit with a file to make it a little less dazzling because the dazzle factor is a little bit high right now, as you guys can see. But it's not quite as drastic in person as it might look on camera, though. It's like a frickin' disco over here. Crazy. I mean, oh god, that is kind of cool. I kind of like that actually. But yeah, so I am going to move on to the next step, which is replacing these internals with LEDs too. What's actually kind of funny about this is I told you about how these LEDs are like super duper bright and all. I actually unintentionally made a disco strober. If I point it up at the ceiling here, the camera, allowing myself to still see by flipping the screen, and I put my hand out, you can see that there is quite a party going on in here. As I said, the device is definitely mesmerizing, and also potentially dangerous to your sight at this point. But yeah, I actually kind of like that though. It takes away potentially from the infinity mirror effect, but I mean, hey, definitely adds a different effect altogether, doesn't it? Yes, stare into the eternal darkness.